Hey there, my name is sjofors, and you may also know me as the Price Whisperer. Uh, with a weird name like mine, I decided that as I was called the Price Whisperer so many times, that I should adopt the moniker. And if you ever need to find me, you can just Google the Price Whisperer, and you will find me. You'll find my videos. You'll find my company, my blog posts, and my recent book, also called The Price Whisperer. And something I really encourage you to buy and read, because I think it's going to hopefully transform your company to the next level if followed the various advice that I put in the book. Anyway, today I want to talk about the ethics in pricing. Now, what do I mean with that? Well, we all know that price gouging in many occasions are actually illegal, right? Certainly here in California, where we have earthquakes and floods and fires and stuff like that, there is a certain definition for what price gouging means, and I think it is that if a company takes more than 10% increase in price to because for various reasons there is a more demand that there is products. I think that is the definition of what they call here is price gouging. But there is others, and as you may or may you know, but or have been thinking of it. But obviously, we probably all remember the pharma guy who bought this company, Sekelis, I think he was called, or something similar. He bought the company, and then he increased price of his drug with 1,100, no, maybe 1,200%. And this was a drug that it was not a generic drug, and the insurance companies were certainly not willing to pay the extraordinary price that he took the drug up to. And when he asked why did he do it, and he said, because I can. Right. And yes, he could, and legally he was in his he was on the right side of law. It's not illegal to do it, because nothing had changed. There wasn't any natural disaster or anything like that affected the needs and the supply of the drugs. He just said, let's do it because I can. But it certainly, in my mind, is unethical, especially when you have something that people really need to keep them alive, right? And there's been any number of similar-ish occasions where people simply they do the unethical thing. They increase prices only because they can, because the buyers have no alternatives. And obviously in my company we've had occasions where, I remember one particular occasion, we had a company that came to us, and they also in the medical field, they had a device that would greatly improve the outcome for those who show up at a hospital ER with a heart attack. And as you may know, certainly if you'd followed me, you know that a low price sets an expectation of inferior quality, and because of that, lower prices leads to lower sales in many cases. But also that prices can be too high. What you also probably know is that there's a single price that leads to the highest sales volume, and that the price that leads to the highest revenue and the highest profits are often substantially higher, to be honest. So here we have this company who comes to us with a device that it saves lives, basically, and and they said, we want you to price this for maximum profits. Now, why would that be unethical? Well, in my in my book, it is unethical for the single reason that when you save lives, you want to make sure that as many hospitals as possible has this device, right? You want to make sure that you set the price on that, call it the tipping point, where lower prices leads to lower sales, and higher prices also leads to lower sales. So you want to maximize sales volume for a life-saving device. This company didn't want that. They wanted to maximize profitability, had no other reason for doing this. And, we said no. He said, no, your pricing should be to save as many lives as possible, not to maximize the profitability in your company, right? And so we said no to them. And yeah, it was, we said no to a fairly substantial project, probably up into the six-figure kind of range for our fees, but it was the right thing to do, right? But there's a flip side here. Also in the medical field, another company that we worked with, this time we worked with a company, they also had a device that greatly improved the outcomes when people get transplants, kidney transplants, or rather the transportation of kidneys from one donor to the receiver of the kidney. And they had the problem was that the device was very sophisticated. It has various pumps and what do you call it? Different kind of stuff that they pumped through fluids. That's the word I was looking for. That they were pumping through the kidneys. They call it perfusion, and there was some $60 or so million invested into the company, and they were not profitable, far from profitable, and they were not profitable because of the single fact that they essentially a very sophisticated device that yes delivered better outcomes, but they were competing with an icebox, right? You go to your grocery store or similar, and you can buy an ice box and fill it with ice for like $10-15. Their device was thousands, right? And yeah, they sold some, but they didn't sell as many as they wanted, of course, and they all sold it at a loss. So investors had become they basically said to the company, you need to triple your prices and become profitable within the next 6 months, because we are not going to support you with any more money, right? And so we helped this company to understand not only the right price that would be approximately 3 times their current price, but also specifically how hospitals would defend for themselves why they would spend so much more money on a device like this compared to a simple icebox. And then we also continued and we trained their salespeople on how to deliver that value message to defend the higher prices. And this was successful. The way it works is that there is, and I think this may be, and you guys may know better, but I think this has to do with that kidneys were the very first organ that could be transplanted successfully. And so every state and some of the territories have a government organization, which is the only organization that can handle these kidneys for transport of kidneys for these transplants. And there's 53 of them. 48 was the company's current customers of those. And through our help and through our training and through our coaching, they were able to increase prices 3 times the prices that I said, and they lost only like 2 customers, so it went down from 48 out of the 53 to 46. Now, I said that jacking up the price like this is unethical. But in this case, it wasn't unethical. And the reason is very simple. Let's say that the company had not been able to increase their prices. They would have died. They would have closed their doors. The product they had disappeared. So in this case, it was a matter of making sure that the hospitals and more important, the patients actually could benefit from the products, the technology, and so forth, the features and functions of this much more advanced kidney transportation device. So the ethical thing here was to increase price so the company could stay in business, so that it could deliver all the value that it delivered to its customers and to its patients. Right? So 2 stories here, different on ethics and pricing, and I want you to think about that, how this works in your particular case. I'm sure that some who listens to me are in a situation where they have no or very little competition and could increase price increase price substantially without affecting sales or anything like that, which is what we often recommend companies. But also think about the ethics here. Is it so that you then deprive certain customers of the ability to buy all the goodness that you have in your product or service? And if so, is that really what you want, right? There may be other aspects of this, higher prices leads to more resource to develop more products and services. So you have to think about that too. But there is a line. There's certainly a line for me when it comes to pricing and ethics. And I hope there is a line for you too. And don't cross that line, please. It may well come back and haunt you in the long term, and you don't want that, obviously, right? Anyway, a little story of ethics pricing. I hope you enjoy this episode, and I wish you a good luck in the future, and make sure you don't price unethically. And again, find me by searching for The Price Whisperer. Again, thank you so much for your time. Bye.